everybody, and welcome back to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. This episode is the 36th, so let's get right into this video. And as we can see, I didn't edit this. Actually, I did edit this layer, not much, but a little. And I fixed the HDI there. Now I just need to, give them their HDI ranking. But yeah, and then if we go over to ideologies, you can see that I actually ended up giving every country their ideology. I actually forgot 2 countries. So, real quick, I will give those 2 countries that I forgot their ideologies. So, Russia is a communist country, and the other country is Oman. And Oman is a republic. So, without that, let's get right into this video. So, the first thing we actually see is if we actually go back to the ideology there, you see that these 2 countries are both expansionist countries. And they are actually both going to go on a conquest to take out some countries. Well, not take out, more like invade, because who knows, they could fully annex, but they also might not. So, this country right here will make the first invasion into this country, the other Myanmar country. I don't really know what country this would be, because that's Bangladesh. Yeah, I guess it's like, I'll just call it Myanmar, North Myanmar. But this country is stronger than the southern Myanmar country, but the southern Myanmar country will still push back a good amount, and around here is when there's a stalemate. And then, if we go over here, we see that the country over here near Hanoi, I think it's called, will invade pretty deep into Laos and they'll stop right there. And after this happens, we actually will see one more country get involved. A planetist country. Oh, and these 2 countries are democratic planetists. That's why this planetist country is getting involved. So, we will see this country make a quick and surprising invasion of the other Myanmar country, as they did not expect to get invaded by this country, as it is relatively new, just like them, but this country is stronger. And if we look, they have so far taken 1 major city and got this country really low on area, as they've already taken around half. And this allows for a pushback for the southern Myanmar country, as they have just equipped all their troops with good gear and equipment, and the other country is trying to push back these guys, which slightly works, but then it's too late to push them back, as they are now being attacked on 2 sides, and at this point they just can't stop them. So when it gets to around here, they'll say, okay, we peace out, and they will surrender over to this country. Meanwhile, for this country over here, we actually see them continue to be invaded and be pushed into by this other country up here. I really don't know what this region would be. I guess East Tibet. I'll call them East Tibet. That's good enough. And then we will see. Is that color? Oh, yeah, I was thinking of this pink one. So, then the Myanmar country, the southern Myanmar country, will make an invasion of the purple Hanoi country. If that is. Or isn't that like the Hainan Island? Or Hanoi Island? I don't know. I forget. But this allows for Laos to push back and make a pretty big invasion and in fact, they will jump over to the island of Hanoi, and they will quickly push around these lands, and, well, they'll just sweep through the Hanoi country, as the Hanoi country really just gave up as they were already being attacked by two other nations besides Lao. So, yeah, let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of this war. As we can see, the Myanmar country actually got pretty big, and they took a good amount of land out of these northern regions, as well as this country getting a lot of land in this region. Over here into this purple Hanoi country, Laos gained a lot of land up in the north, and they took the whole island of Hanoi. And Myanmar got these regions of the purple Chinese, and this Tibetan country got these regions. So, let's get rid of this capital, and now on to the next event, which will actually take place over here in Europe, specifically Scandinavia, where we will see a rebellion out of the Swedish or the Scandinavian country, I guess, as they are not being treated well, and for that they want independence. So quickly they will take over a lot of land, which will look like this, and this ends up sparking some more rebellions in this country, as we see into the most profitable lands of this country in Norway, besides maybe Sweden and Finland. Well, like the main regions, like over there and over here, as this country took all the main regions of this country. Actually, these two both did. And then we will see another country rebel away. And this country will be over here in Finland, as all three of these areas were being treated not that well. So that caused for them to want to rebel away, as we see right here. And all three of these countries have taken a good amount of land, but they will start their invasion, which will go very successfully, as most of this country's main areas of land have already fallen. And yeah, so these countries will quickly take over lots of land, and this country will surrender and say, okay, we want a peace treaty. And these three rebellions say, okay, sure. So, let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of the rebellion. As we can see, the Swedish, the Norwegians, and the Finnish all got all the land that they had wanted, as well as, and there is a new Finnish country that I will be calling East Finland, or I could also call it Green Finland, which actually I will be calling it Green Finland. So, the rest of the original Scandinavian country that was here is now only in the northern regions of Norway and Sweden in real life, as well as in the Norfolk Islands. So, next, we will actually be going down over to the Sultanates, as we will actually see them invade into a country. And that country will be none other than the new Libyan country, the reddish-brown Libyan country over here. And immediately after taking around these lands, they will say, hey, this is all we want. Can we call for peace? And this Libyan country, knowing they stand absolutely no chance, says, yeah, sure, we'll call for peace. And so, quickly, I will show this peace treaty, as it will only take a couple seconds. There we go. So, the Sultanates have just gained these two areas of land from the Libyan country. And now we will actually go down over to here, because we will be seeing another war, as this war will mainly be between this kind of beige-ish Angolan country versus this, I guess, green DR country. And by DR I meant DRC. So, the Angolan country, having a coast, will give them a big advantage and make them push very far into this country. But immediately after, we see a very big pushback by this country. As, don't get me wrong, they're not that weak. They might actually be near stronger than these guys. They're around the same power. And I would place them both at like 32nd and 31st, with these guys being like a slight bit stronger than these guys. But now we will actually see a new country enter this war on the side of the other DRC country, as we see this country quickly invade into these regions of Angola. We will actually see them focus on this coastline, which will at first be successful, but when Angola pulls some of their troops back through and puts their troops back into their land, we see them have a pretty strong pushback, but not pushing back this country all the way. Although they do split up this country's invasion into two parts. So, that will very much weaken their front line, and in fact, it will make their front line fully fall. But now, the DRC country has now pushed back in those regions and has started to make their own invasion, which is going very successfully. And around there is where they get to before they realize if they want to even be able to hold on to those lands, they will have to take over all of those lands. So they say, hey, could we occupy these regions of your country and potentially take them after this war? And they're like, you know what, sure, if we get some land from Angola. And the DR country says, okay, deal. And seeing this, the Angolan country is very worried and ends up saying, please let us peace out, please, please, please. And the DR country is gonna be idle for a while, and so are these guys, but these guys are gonna be pushing, and they will make a long spearhead into this major city. And right here is where the Angolan country says, okay, I surrender. They actually surrender over to this country. So, let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of this war, as we see that this country has gotten a ton of land, and actually their capital is centered. So let me fix that. So, all of these countries gained a good amount of land, especially the country that had land taken from them that wasn't originally in this war, as they were the country that the Angolans surrendered to, so they got a ton of land. But first, we see that this country gained a small amount of land, making them slightly stronger. And then the green DR country up here gained a good amount of land, making them a lot bigger and stronger. And then same with the other country, as I don't really know what country that would be. But yeah, so that is that war over. And now we will actually see the rest of this fall, as it will actually fall into two countries. And this is the peace treaty of the collapse of the Hokkaido colony, as we see a new kind of Washington country and a new British Columbia country, as well as this country gaining a lot of land in these regions and the kind of Nunavut country gaining land in these regions. So, all four of the countries that either gained land or came out of that are pretty big. And yeah, now we will actually head down over here to see something happen. And that will be a war between the strongest country in South America. And in fact, I think maybe both of the Americas. If we real quick check. And they are actually the strongest country in both of the Americas. So, with that, the Brazilians know that this country cannot really stop them, but at the same time, it will be really hard to traverse through these lands as this is in the Amazon rainforest. And immediately, these guys know that if Brazil's gonna attack them, they will have to move their capital further into the rainforest. And so, they do. And this was already like their second capital place, so it wasn't really that hard to move it. But yeah, so we see the Brazilians end up pushing very far with a very strong spearhead into this country, as their spearhead keeps getting bigger and bigger until they are on the outskirts of this country, or not country, capital. Not capital either. Major city. There we go. Until we see them make a new spearhead and see them trying to encircle around 15% of this country's army. And right before this closes, 15% of this country's army escapes, as they were right here when this push started to happen. And then they were here when it got around here. And then here when it got to there. And there when it got to here. Then, they escaped. So, perfect timing. Because as soon as they get out, this closes. And immediately after, they start their push back into these lands. Because, well, they didn't just escape with being sneaky. They had to attack these guys a lot, and it was very close. And in fact, it was so close that both of the sides have gotten very weak in this front line. But this country has more access to get to their areas over the Brazilians, as this was just a very slim strip of land. And actually, we now see this country make a really good pushback, as they are nowhere near the strength of the Brazilians, but they are still doing very good. And around here is when the old capital is lost. And we now see the Brazilians with taking out the other country's second best major city. They will make a very big push. And this push will heavily hurt this other Brazilian country. Actually, I'll call them Amazonia, because, well, the Amazon rainforest, of course. And yeah, so this country is now very crippled in terms of how much land and major cities they've lost, as they have already lost around 7 major cities, and they only have 8 more major cities left. So, they just got a lot of their major cities taken over. But now, we will actually have to see this green Venezuelan country, which actually did make this rankings at 18th. This country is 18th. And they will end up pushing into I'll say this country was the 25th strongest country. So, still, this is not like that easy for either the Brazilians or the Venezuelan country. But most of the Amazonian country's army is over on the Brazil border. And this will actually get pushed very far until even Ecuador joins in. But not only Ecuador. After Ecuador, Peru decides to join in, which in a second I will show you. And yeah, so when Peru joins in, yeah, all hope is lost. Because that means that they are being attacked by every side and nobody's helping them. Now, the Brazilians do border 4 other countries. And this pink country, in fact, was pretty good friends with the Amazonian country. So they will quickly invade into Brazil, taking over 3 major cities until they're saying, okay, this is all we want for you guys invading our friend. Can we take this land? Yes or no, or will you invade us? And the Brazilians say 2 major cities. And so the Uruguay country says, fine. And then Red Argentina will actually make their push into Brazil as, yeah, they just want some land. But actually, they're saying, nah, just kidding, Brazil. We wouldn't actually do that. We only want this much land from you. And in fact, our target is actually this country over here, this Chilean country, which is very weak and it's actually one of the worst countries in the world if we're talking about HDI. But if we check HDI, they rank as, I think, tied for the 3rd worst in the world. Yeah, they do. So, not too good. So, seeing this, these guys will make a quick invasion, and Peru will decide to join into this as well. So, yeah, both sides will gain a good amount of land. And at this point is where they call for a peace treaty on both sides. So, let's go ahead and see that peace treaty. But right before this peace treaty happened, the Amazonian country ended up invading into all of those lands and taking that back, only leaving Peru with this one major city. In fact, they have their own invasion of Ecuador, which they chose to be their main target before the peace treaty. And then, also right before the peace treaty, they made a pretty big pushback over in those regions, which were actually not which were not heavily being attacked as this area. Then one more pushback by the Amazonians right before the peace treaty, I will say again. And yeah, so seeing these new lands that has been changed, Brazil will say, yeah, we'll still accept this. And yeah, so let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. So, this is the peace treaty of this big war. As we see, the green Venezuelan country gain a pretty large amount of land, making them a good amount stronger, and the Amazonian country actually gaining a lot of land. Now, the Brazilians gained 5 major cities from this war. And over here, Peru gained 1 area of the Amazonian country. And down over here, they gained a good amount of land over from this North Chile country as they get 2 major cities. Then the Red Argentinians get those regions of land, and the Buenos Aires country, so I'll just call them East Argentina, or no, I'll call them Navy Blue Argentina. That's what I'll call them. They gain that region up there. And then this Uruguay country gains these 3 major cities from this war. So in fact, Brazil only gained 2 major cities in total from this war. And this Uruguay country is actually looking pretty strong, to be honest. And honestly, Amazonia's borders are looking peak right now, in my opinion. But yeah, now we will actually go up here into the North American regions, as we see that Texas That's right, Texas actually chooses to break away from California. And why? Well, they just didn't want to be a part of the Californian Texan Union anymore. Plus, they also felt like they were being mistreated by the Californian government, which was the government ruling the union. And so, yeah, Texas breaks away from the Californians. And in fact, they're planning on joining one of their two neighbors. And so they're looking over at Mexico and they're looking at Green America. Which one would benefit them more? Well, in terms of safety, that would be Mexico. In terms of strength, Green America. Economy, Green America. Stability, well, that honestly depends on the HDI map, which means Green America would win stability. And yeah, so they see this and they're like, okay, everything's pretty much pointing over to Green America. So we will join Green America. And that is even worse for California than Texas just breaking away, as now that region is a part of their biggest enemy, which is Green America. And now they're saying, hey, Mexico, do you want to join my country? What about you, Guatemala? Immediately, both countries are like, we would never even think about it. So don't even ask us. And now Florida, over here, says, hey, Guatemala, can we have Jamaica and Cuba? And Guatemala says, you know what, sure. And so Guatemala will give Florida both of these areas, as they are not that strong of areas for Guatemala anyways. Sure, they do have two major cities, but they're not like the majorest of major cities compared to some of the other major cities. As yes, they're still major cities, so they do benefit the country. And that does lose them a little bit of GDP, but also not that much at all. Maybe like max 4 billion from those two major cities. Now, if we actually go over to this country, they're saying, hey, we want to unite with the Ontario regions. You're stopping us from doing that, Green America. And Green America says, I don't care what you're gonna do about it. And they're like, well, we're gonna declare war on you then. So Green America kicks them out of the Octagon Alliance, and then immediately they start to invade the Manitoba country, which immediately got swept and will just get annexed, which honestly every country in this alliance is happy about, because that Manitoba country to them was just annoying. And now this makes it easier for Green America to get resources through here, as now they connect up. So, something that will happen is, if we look over here, that could happen, but also that could happen. Now, which one would happen? Well, one of the two countries has an alliance. The other one doesn't. So, we will actually start to see a war. Now, this war is actually caused because these two countries, over the years, were starting to become good friends, but then the New York country wanted to kill the leader of this country, and so these guys had found out, and that spoiled many relations with them. And as we check the religion layer, these two countries are almost the same full religion, but this New York country actually has this region, which is a different religion, and that different religion is going to try and make their country be alive again. So, with that war starting, these rebels finally see it as the correct time to rebel away, as it's the easiest time for them to be able to rebel away. And real quick, New York is just gonna let them rebel away because, well, currently they can't really do anything about it. I did that in the wrong color. So New York is just gonna make a very fast and quick peace treaty with this country, so they can go back to focusing on their war. As the reason why they peaced out and didn't try to invade was because the areas rebelled away were fully in favor of that rebellion, and New York knew if they just kept those areas, they would keep trying to rebel away. So, with this region rebelling away, kind of makes up for the Manitoba country getting annexed. And actually, we will see the new country over here join the alliance of Green America as, well, they want protection. And seeing as this is like the major alliance in North America, Quebec is gonna join, and so is the big Nunavut country, which doesn't have a country yet. Yeah, the Nunavut country does not have a country yet. I forgot to give them a capital, which is something I should do, and I will do right now. I thought I had a capital copied already, and now I do, and there. So, we now see Nunavut's capital be right there, instead of like right here, which is probably the best major city to put it in. But it, like area-wise, this is the best. Economically, defensively, offensively, and politically, that would be the best spot. And at this point, they're like, can you stop telling us that that spot would be better? Here, we will just move it. Happy, silver, and I say yes. So, now we see that country have their major city in the spot it should have been. And yeah, so we will now see a new alliance form. And this alliance is actually in, well, South America, as they do not want the Octagon Alliance to spread their influence down to them. So we will actually see a fully new symbol, and that will actually, I do not like that. I think we've used that, and I think we've used that. You know what? No, that's too close to a triangle, am I right? So we will be doing a hexagon for this alliance. And yeah. So we will now see all the countries in the hexagon alliance, sorry, not pentagon. And it will actually be most countries in South America, just like most countries in North America are. And the only country not in it, actually, sorry, I did not mean to add these bottom four. If you didn't mean to add those bottom four, how did you? I just did somehow, okay? And in fact, these bottom countries in these southern South America countries, not bottom South America countries, will have their own alliance, and that is the Trapezoid Alliance. So yeah, there's like two main alliances. Actually, I feel like Amazonia, even after that war, would be in the Trapezoid Alliance, even though they are still heavily influenced by Brazil. So, that is the alliances over there. In fact, there's something happening big over here. As we see, these three countries that have been allies and really good friends for a long time actually not being friends or allies anymore. In fact, they will have very tense relations. So, the first one to leave is the country that is being led by fiery now. And then the next country to leave will be Polo Beatrice V, which will end up making the alliance fully collapse. So, seeing this, and if we actually go over to rankings, we see the Niger country also, which is also this green country, will be mad enough at these two other countries to start invading. Now, the orange and blue countries still have good relations because I said we'll invade these countries, not the orange country. And I said they're mad at these countries instead of just the orange country. Which, no, all of the countries do not like each other anymore. But the green country is the first one to act. And now, the blue Nigerian country will make their invasion of the Ivory Coast country, and then now they will make their invasion of the Niger country, as the Niger country was way too focused on the Ivory Coast, as they did not end up defending in their border against the Nigerians. So the Nigerians will mainly focus over here. And yeah, that will not go too good for the Niger country, as they will have to start pulling back their troops. But when it gets to around here is where this country has to stop, because otherwise they'll probably get a rebellion in their country. And so the Ivory Coast will end up taking over all those lands, or taking back all those lands, and they will start to push back against Polo Beatrice V, as they are trying to push into Nigeria more. But they still have to hold off really strong right there. And in the first thing that the Ivory Coast country can do is invade the Niger country. And around here is where the Niger country realizes that the Nigerians are able to hold off, as they're 21th, while the Niger country is 13th. But it isn't really that much. Well, it is a pretty big difference, but not like a massive difference. But yeah, so we will see the Niger country have to make a very quick invasion, focusing all of their troops into the Ivory Coast country, leaving their guard down against the Niger country. But they wipe out the Ivory Coast country in a matter of 2 months. Yeah, because Ivory Coast, their army was exhausted after having to hold those shoe fronts already, and having to push back over here and getting pushed back. So, yeah, their army was not that well trained, but immediately after that, the Niger country will start pushing back. And a lot of their troops are still over here, so they will start to push from over here, making a very strong front against the Nigerians. And this will keep getting worse, as the Niger country will just keep on pushing. And you would have thought that by now the Nigerian country would have probably gained more allies and more resources to get stronger than the Niger country, but they ended up not being able to do that. So after this war, the Niger country will probably fall down to around 19th in the rankings, I'd say, which is right here, which would mean Kenya will actually stay where they are, but every country above Kenya will move up 1. So South Australia will be 13th, Morocco 14th, Italian Republic 15th, Red Argentina 16th, Green Venezuela 17th, Green India 18th, and then Niger 19th. So, Niger has taken out both of these countries, and what they actually do is actually honestly pretty shocking, as we see them with a majority of their land being in the pink French religion, which is actually very good, as it pretty much all is. So they can just fully annex these two countries without, like, religious breakaway states. And yeah, so they have just doubled in size and probably doubled in strength. But thing is, they need to rebuild, so that's why they're down to 19th instead of being all the way up at like 9th in front of China, which that would probably be very big for the Nigeria country, as they are, I think, now the biggest country in Africa. So, good job to you. If you are. Actually, it might be, like, close between Madagascar. Yeah, like, only Madagascar would be able to compete for that. But, now, we will see another event happen in this episode. And that will be another war against the Russians after they had just lost the other war. So, the reason why there's another war was because they thought they were still really strong and awesome and cool, that they could trash talk the Ukrainians, the Hungarians, or the Blue Romanians, the Adriaticans, the Estonians, the Finnish, and the Green Finnish, as well as that country, the Kazakh country. And so that trash talking does not go in their favor. Like, why would it ever? Yeah, their leader is stupid. So let's go see who it is. So it's still Sosif Jalin, but Sosif Jalin is 88 years old. So he has a younger representative to talk for him, who is 31, and, well, let's just say Sosif Jalin chose the wrong representative, as this representative does not want what's best for their country. In fact, the reason why they got into the other war was because of that representative trash talking. And so, that will very much not go good for them, as the Crimeans, who are at this point like one ranking behind them, make a very, very strong push into all of Russia. And this will allow for the Blue Romanians to make a big front line against them too, or in their perspective, a big front line, as they have invaded into 3 major cities, which is pretty big for them. And now Estonia will say, yeah, we're invading a ton of land. We don't care. So they will invade into all of these regions. And then the Green Finnish will also invade into these regions of Russia. And with the Green Finnish invading into Russia, Russia knows, yeah, it's wraps for them. And in fact, it's even more wraps when the Yellow Kazakhs, or I should just call Kazakhstan, which is also, by the way, the 6th strongest country in the world, just behind Brazil, Persia, Greece, the Sultanates, and the Iberian Union. So, this war will go very badly, as once the Yellow Kazakhs join in, they will make a very, very big sweep of Russia, as Crimea is probably like the 34th strong, no, because what were those 2 countries that, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure it's, no, who was it? I forget. Oh yeah, like 31st and 32nd strongest countries. Well, Crimea is the 34th and Russia is the 33rd, which is actually surprising. But now, after these guys are crippled, Crimea is 32nd and they are 31st. And yeah, that will change for Crimea and Russia soon, as the Kazakh country makes one of the biggest invasions in the world, probably ever. And now, Estonia and Ukraine end up taking the rest of the land. So, let's go ahead and see this peace treaty. And this is the peace treaty of this final Russian war from that old Russian country. And we see that the Kazakhs got a massive amount of land, ensuring their spot as the largest country in the world. So they are very big, and they now have lots of influence, and they might just almost pass Brazil and Greece and be the fourth strongest country in the world. And right now, they have just surpassed Brazil. But with these other countries gaining land, their influence will grow into more European regions, and it will also be brought more into these regions. So, with that being pretty much the last thing in this episode, besides the very quick annexing of Purple China by, well, Pink China, yeah, now we will see the final event. Yes, I know I already said that the other event was the final event, but now this is the final event, okay? So, the final event of this episode will be one final war, and it will be in India, between the Siam Pakistani country, I guess, or the Siam Indian country, with the gold Indian country being the ally and helping out, versus the yellow Indian country. Now, this will quickly make the green Indians very interested in land. And real quick, if we check ideologies, none of these countries are actually like expansionist countries, but they are all planetist. This is the only democratic country in this region, or that they surround. So the Pakistani country will make a quick advancement over here. So will the gold old Indian country, which both take over tons of land very fast. Now they are staring at this Indian country, as this country might be taken out in the next episode, but who knows. So, real quick, let's see this peace treaty. So this is the peace treaty of this war, as we see the green Indians getting only one province up here, so I didn't really need to show that. But then we see this country getting all of their new lands, as they just got a lot bigger in size, and now they're going to take over them, which is cute. But the gold Indians will get one province, but they actually gave these regions to the other Indian country, so gold India would border them, and stupidly, this country actually accepted, which was the wrong thing to do, because now, instead of giving it to, like, Bangladesh for, like, a buffer between them and the gold Indians, it's a direct border. But yeah, so that is the final thing in this episode, and if you enjoyed, leave a like. If you want to see more of my videos, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, and comment down your favorite country. Other than that, peace.